Hello, welcome to Just the Dis. My name is Brian. We talk about Blu-rays here. And I have next to me a whole bunch of Kino Lorber stuff. And there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. There's a lot. So I'm going to try and be... I say this a lot. I'm going to try and be relatively quick. Just going through these. Just some stuff that I think is interesting for one reason or another. And stuff I don't think thus far I've talked about on the channel. So Kino is a label I like very much. Especially lately, I feel like they've really been doing great work in terms of the films they're putting out, the variety of, titles and genres, and the commentary tracks. A lot of them that they're getting are pretty great. So I've been pretty happy with their stuff. Some of these releases are a little bit older. That's the other reason I want to talk about them, is because I haven't talked about some of the older Kino titles on the channel. So there's a lot of stuff here, though. Let's dive into this. I'm going to start with some Burt Reynolds, okay? Let's start with Stick, with Burt directing and co-starring George Segal, Candice Bergen, and Charles Durning. And I like this movie quite a bit. This is Burt as an ex-con, I believe. Yes, trying to stay clean on the rough streets of Miami. And I brought this one up, and I started with this one kind of as a tribute because of George Segal's recent passing, and I'm a huge George Segal fan. I love him in California Split. I love him in Roller Coaster. I love him in The Hot Rock. He's just one of those actors that I kind of think is really great and was a bigger deal in the 70s. And of course, he's had a lot of sitcom work before he passed that I think brought him back into prominence between Just Shoot Me and the Goldbergs and stuff like that. So I love seeing people love George Segal. But he is really great in this. Like, there's a great bit where he's sort of a mobstery guy, and Burt Reynolds, helps him hotwire a car, and they kind of hit it off and become friends. But it says, Stick finds himself at the center of a high-class circle of criminals, including a nervous drug kingpin. Oh, yeah, that's Segal, I think. A shady film producer, a stock market whiz with his own gorgeous financial advisor. Or maybe that's Segal. I don't remember now. And a psychotic albino named Moke, legendary stuntman Dar Robinson from Sharky's Machine and others. Dar Robinson, you can see on the back there, he does one of the great stunts in cinema in this movie where he does a free fall from this building, and it's pretty epic. Especially what we're used to seeing now. I know we're used to seeing a lot of stunts, but I feel like it's not the high falling, free fall kind of stuff that Dar Robinson would do. And yeah, that's one of the big reasons to watch the movie. It's a great moment, not to spoil what happens to the Dar Robinson character, but when you see it, you'll be like, dang, that was really great. So anyway, pretty great one from Burt. I really enjoy. This is one of his better directing efforts. And this one has an audio commentary from film critic Nick Pinkerton, who I think I mentioned on the channel, but I'm a huge Nick Pinkerton fan, and he's very thorough, and I don't want to say academic. I think I've tried to describe him before as just well, he's just intelligent, just an intelligent guy that puts his commentary tracks together with care, and I always enjoy him. And I follow him on Twitter, and I like him. So anyway, he is the commentator on this one, and it's well worth your time. Next we have Burt in Gator. And I think Burt directed this too. Yep, another Burt directed film. This is the sequel, of course, to White Lightning. He reprises his role as Gator McCluskey, the Bayou's baddest good old boy. And I don't like this movie as much as I like White Lightning, which is also available from Kino, and which has part one of this interview, Burt Reynolds Back to the Bayou featurette. They interviewed Burt for both these discs. This is obviously before he passed away, and so you get the second part of that interview that starts with White Lightning on this disc. But it's a good movie, and it's got Jack Weston, it's got Lauren Hutton, and Jerry Reed in a really interesting bad guy role. He's really dark in this. And it says Gator McCluskey returns as the moonshine running king of the bayou in this high-octane sequel to White Lightning, filled with supercharged adventure and double-barreled action. Let's see here. The feds want Gator, not for moonshining, but to go undercover to expose Bama McCall, Jerry Reed, Gator's boyhood pal, who is now a local crime boss. So that's the tension in the movie, is him, sort of cozying up to his old pal and them feeling each other out. And yeah, it's just, I like Jerry Reed as an actor. I think he was always interesting. And this is, like I said, it's more interesting in some respects because he's playing a villain. Usually he's sort of like the sidekick buddy, and he's great in that sort of capacity. But in this one, he's a little darker. There's some really dark stuff with him in this, and he handles it well, and he's effective, and I buy him as a villain, So Gator is definitely worth your time, but definitely check out White Lightning as well. One more, Bert. We have Navajo Joe. This is directed by the great Sergio Corbucci, the much-touted Sergio Corbucci, as mentioned in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And this has that really famous, well, I don't know how famous, but famous in film circles, score from Ennio Morricone, which was then used in Election. There's a scene, it's just like this great sort of almost tribal screaming that's happening in the track, and it really elevates, the whole score elevates this movie. But I know this is a big favorite of Quentin Tarantino's. He's played this at the New Beverly, I think, and at multiple QT fests where he was programming. It says, relentless in his vengeance, deadly in his violence. Burt Reynolds stars in this lusty, gutsy action western about a fearless Indian with a relentless vendetta. A band of outlaws headed for a sullen leader named Duncan sweeps across the country like the plague, destroying everything in its path, including the Indian village. Outlaws arrive in the town of Esperanza, where they are hired by a crooked doctor to hijack a bank train and share in the wealth. But the sole survivor from said village, a renegade Navajo named Joe, Burt Reynolds, foils the plan by relocating the money. An irate Duncan holds an innocent girl hostage until Joe surrenders. You get the idea. He basically is the one-man force against this, army of bad dudes, and he's really good. And the movie's good. It's a great Corbucci Western, and I do recommend it. It has an audio commentary from film historian Gary Polmucci, who I don't know, and I haven't heard it, but I assume it's interesting. So that's one more Bert. Let's move it along. Something of an 80s classic, Running Scared, from 1986. This is about two cops in, I want to say, don't quote me yet, Chicago. So Peter Hyams directs Gregory Hines and Billy Crystal in the motion picture that asks the question, how come bad guys always drive good cars? The answer has them running scared in this lightning-paced comic thriller. Ray and Danny are the wild men of the Windy City's police force. The pair's unorthodox methods results in a tough town until they come up against Julio Gonzalez, Jimmy Smits, a smooth-talking drug dealer who is bucking to become Chicago's first Spanish godfather. Trying to nail Gonzalez, they blow a delicate undercover operation and are sent on a forced vacation to Key West, where they discover the good life of warm weather and warmer women. The new locale makes them decide to retire, but not before putting Gonzalez behind bars first. So yeah, this is a really great, buddy cop movie. One of the greats. And I feel like it's gotten a little bit lost in the buddy movie, I guess, love that continues to this day. People still talk about Midnight Run, which is one of the great buddy movies. But Running Scared, maybe not as much. And they are fantastic. And Dan Hedaya is really great as their lieutenant. And the whole cast is really good. Stephen Bauer. I'm trying to remember who else is. Joey Pants is in this. Darlene Flugel, John Grise. It's just a really great character actor cast, and an 80s classic in a lot of ways that has fallen out of favor, sort of, in terms of, like I said, not enough love. Give Running Scared some more love. Give it a watch if you haven't seen it. This has an audio commentary from director Peter Hyams. Very cool stuff. All right, let's try this. Harry in Your Pocket. Now, this is a really interesting sort of pickpocket movie. James Coburn, Michael Sarrazin, Trish Vanderveer, and a scene-stealing Walter Pidgeon play a highly professional team of pickpockets roaming through varying cityscapes in the U.S. and Canada, preying upon the innocent with disturbing charm. The engaging crime drama with an undercurrent of subtle humor was beautifully shot by the great Fred J. Cohenkamp, who shot Papillon, apparently, and features a memorable score by legendary composer Lalo Schifrin. Harry in Your Pocket was the sole theatrical film for television writer, director, and producer Bruce Geller, who created the classic TV shows Mission Impossible and Mannix. Very interesting. But so this is kind of a low-key, comedic crime movie, pickpocket movie. And I don't know about you, but I'm a big fan of James Coburn, and he does have charm for miles, and it really plays in this movie, and I like this one. I think this is a fun, very underseen pickpocket crime film. And I was really this is back when Kino was not really doing much in the way of features, so this is a much older release, but from 1973, and very underseen but very enjoyable. So I do recommend this one. If you are interested in such things, Harry in Your Pocket is worth a look. All right. The Midnight Man. Burt Lancaster. Screen legend Burt Lancaster stars as Jim Slade, a former Chicago policeman who has just been released from prison for shooting his wife's lover. He's offered and takes a job as a campus night watchman at Jordan College. When a co-ed, the daughter of a prominent senator, is murdered, the local sheriff tries to pin the crime on a creepy night janitor. Slade decides to start his own unauthorized investigation and takes the lid off the hornet's nest. Lancaster and Roland Kibbe co-wrote, co-produced, and co-directed this top-notch murder mystery with an amazing cast that includes Susan Clark, Cameron Mitchell, Morgan Woodward, Ed Lauter. Boy, do I love Ed Lauter. Catherine Bach from the Dukes of Hazzard. This is an interesting one. This is one that was, I think, widely unavailable for a long time until this Blu-ray came out. This is an audio commentary by Howard S. Berger and Nathaniel Thompson, and this was just a neat one to see because it had been bootleg only. I think maybe there was a VHS, but definitely the DVD I think was... Okay, don't quote me. I don't know about the DVD, but I don't remember there being a DVD of this. This is a movie that I'd slightly heard of before the release, but was excited to see. It's from 1974, so it's a later Lancaster film, but I definitely think it's worth your time if you're a fan of him and sort of that 70s vibe. It's definitely Lancaster in the 70s. So, The Midnight Man, a rare Lancaster film. Okay. The Day After. Whew. Okay, this was a big deal. This was a big deal even when I was in grade school. I remember when this premiered on television. It just really shocked a lot of people. And this is a really interesting Blu-ray release, and actually a really great Blu-ray release that's, I think, slightly underrated in that it includes both the original 122-minute TV cut, and that's at a 1:33:1 ratio, so you get your square viewing experience as you would have on TV when it came out, and the 127-minute theatrical cut at 1:78:1, the widescreen format that fits widescreen TVs. And it's way... I mean, you know what? I don't know if I even saw it when it came out. I'll be honest. Like, it wasn't the kind of thing that my parents were like, hey, kids, let's watch this really depressing movie about nuclear war tonight. You know, it wasn't... My sisters were younger than me, and it wouldn't have been the kind of thing we would have watched. You know, we were too busy watching Knight Rider or something. You know, we weren't going to watch The Day After. So it was kind of a revelation to me in a way, like to see this movie that was so notorious and such a big deal when it came out. Such a water cooler movie, such a film that, kids in high school were talking about, everybody talked about it the next day. But it's really about basically a nuclear attack and some major cities getting wiped out and the radiation, and it goes really dark. It stars Jason Robards, Jo Beth Williams, Steve Guttenberg, John Lithgow. It's directed by Nicholas Meyer, who did like Time After Time and Star Trek II and a whole bunch of others. A really great director. In fact, there's a really great interview with Nicholas Meyer on here where he talks about why he did it. And I guess part of the reason was he was in psychotherapy at the time and he was on the fence about doing it. And he felt like, he sort of presented it to his therapist as this moral quandary, like the kind of thing, like a project he should do, the right kind of project. And I think it was his therapist who kind of nudged him. And I'm not going to give away exactly how it goes down, but his therapist basically is like, if you were the right kind of person, you would do this. Like, I'm totally misquoting what his therapist actually said, but regardless, it was like the kind of thing that pushed him over the top to decide to do the movie. And I'm so glad he did, because it really is an interesting and effective, if bleak, take on what would happen if the United States had been struck, the major cities had been struck by a nuclear attack during the Cold War. So definitely worth your time. It has an audio commentary by film historian Lee Gammon and comic artist, writer Tristan Jones. There's also an interview with Jo Beth Williams. And yeah, it's really interesting. I really think this one is worth a look for those that haven't seen it. And I think it's totally one of those films that, was a big deal when it came out, but maybe I don't remember how much of a I'm sure there was a VHS release and maybe a DVD release. This is a really deluxe Blu-ray edition of this film. So one of the better, I want to say one of the better Kino releases I've seen, and one that I really enjoyed as a package overall. So definitely check out The Day After if you can. Spetters. Okay, this is really interesting. This is a Paul Verhoeven film from 1980. This is when he was still making films in the Netherlands. Brand new 4K restoration from legendary filmmaker Paul Verhoeven, RoboCop, of course, Starship Troopers, and screenwriter Gerard Soutman, Soldier of Orange. He wrote that and did that with Paul Verhoeven. Comes this unrated director's cut of the explosive, fast-paced, and thrilling coming-of-age drama. Raw, intense, and unabashedly sexual, Spetters is a wild ride that will knock the unsuspecting for a loop. Rian, F, and Hans are three young guys stuck in an industrial town on the outskirts of Rotterdam. They couldn't be more different except for one thing. They shared a passion for motorcycle racing. That's actually the focus of this movie. If you had told me that Paul Verhoeven made a movie about motorcycle racing with Rutger Hauer, when I saw RoboCop, I would have been like, who's Paul Verhoeven? Because I was just like, I really love RoboCop. I didn't know anything about directors in 1987. Anyway, so this is just one of those movies. This is in Danny Perry's Guide for the Film Fanatic. It has a really nice write-up. And so it was one that was on my radar because of that. And this is a total under-the-radar Kino release. Like, nobody's talking about the fact that Spetters got a Blu-ray. And it got a Blu-ray a while ago. So I feel like, again, bringing up older Kino releases is something I like to do because I feel like maybe a lot of you didn't even realize this was available. So, shared passion for motorcycle racing, which each sees as a ticket to a better life. But a deeper passion will soon rule their lives when a sexy, ambitious blonde, the woman from The Fourth Man, which if you haven't seen that, that's a really interesting Paul Verhoeven film. There's this whole period of Paul Verhoeven before he came to the States that I think maybe folks, well, it's not their fault. A lot of folks probably aren't aware of. I remember Anchor Bay made a big effort to put out Turkish Delight and Fourth Man and Soldier of Orange. they had this whole Verhoeven collection on DVD, and I don't think all that stuff made its way to Blu-ray in the States. I think it might have made its Blu-ray debuts overseas. But anyway, so I feel like that's a little underrepresented at this point. And this film definitely is. Comes between them and provokes unforeseen events that will rock their worlds. So you get sort of a love triangle-y thing with these motorcycle dudes. I know that doesn't sound interesting, but it's way better than I could possibly sell it, right? And it's Paul Verhoeven, so give it a shot. It's in Dutch with English subtitles, which is also interesting to see. To see Rutger Hauer speaking Dutch and doing these films with Verhoeven before he took off in the States. So this is one of those movies. Anyway, Spetters, worth your look, worth your time. Taking a Beverly Hills with Ken Wall. This is directed by Sidney J. Furie. In this game, it's either win or die. Get ready for Beverly Hills to crash and burn as Ken Wall takes a one-man stand against one of the most daring heists ever conceived. When a toxic chemical spill sends fumes billowing through the city, emergency teams on the spot in minutes to evacuate all civilians and set up a quarantine. But it turns out that the spill is really a hoax. I don't want to give away any more than that. But basically, Ken Wall is Boomer Hayes, a pro quarterback and local resident and undisputed master of moving downfield against odds. Boomer skillfully evades a deadly SWAT tank and dozens of hired guns, but as the criminals are closing in fast, he'll have to use every trick in his playbook and more if he's going to survive. So you get this like pro quarterback. This is very much a Die Hard kind of thing, okay? But you have a really interesting cast. Matt Frewer, who is, of course, he's Max Headroom, if I recall. You can kind of see him right there. Robert Davi is really good in this, and there's a whole bunch of faces you'll recognize. But this is an underappreciated action gem. There's a lot of Die Hard knockoffs, and I feel like this one has gotten lost in the shuffle completely and is definitely worth a look. This one has an audio commentary from Howard S. Berger and Sidney J. Furie biographer Daniel Creamer. And 2-3-5-1, so a nice widescreen movie. Definitely action fun from 1991. If you haven't seen it, worth your time. Okay. Moving right along. The Ice Harvest. Directed by Harold Ramis. This is one of the most interesting entries in Harold Ramis's filmography because it's kind of a Christmas noir, okay? And I'm sure there's a lot of you that have seen it, but I'm quite sure there's a lot of you that have not seen this movie that stars John Cusack, Billy Bob Thornton, Randy Quaid, Oliver Platt, Mike Starr. God, I love Mike Starr. 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. John Cusack and Billy Bob Thornton lead an all-star cast in this hilariously unpredictable thriller when lawyer Charlie Cusack and his partner Vic Thornton steal from a mob boss. They think they've pulled off the perfect crime, but when they race through a night filled with mayhem, lust and lethal surprises, they realize that the biggest risk they'll take will be trusting each other. From Harold Ramis, the director of Analyze This and Groundhog Day, The Ice Harvest cracks with outrageous laughs and slippery twists that will keep you guessing until the very end. The great Robert Benton produced and co-wrote the screenplay. So that's a big deal. And that's part of the reason this movie is so good, is Robert Benton's involvement. This has an audio commentary from Harold Ramis, which I remember being very good. Two alternate endings, which I think is always intriguing when a film has multiple alternate endings. Outtakes, Cracking the Story featurette, Beneath the Harvest featurette, and an analysis of a scene. So it's actually a really nice special edition. But if you like, and this is from 2005, so this one's totally been forgotten at this point, I think. But I was really psyched that they brought this out. This is definitely one, I think I saw it in the theater and was really surprised by how dark and funny and noirish it was for a film from Harold Ramis. Not that he didn't do dark films, but in the 2005s of his career, he was doing much broader stuff, I believe. So this was a bit of a left turn, but definitely worth your time. I really do recommend The Ice Harvest if you haven't seen it. Well worth a look. Okay. We've seen a trend of time-bounce movies lately. On Hulu, for instance, you see things like Palm Springs and Boss Level. And there's other time travel. Time travel is a big deal right now. And I love time travel. I love time-bounce movies. This is one of the most underseen and underrated time-bounce movies out there. Retroactive with James Belushi. And who am I thinking of? Kylie Travis is in it. Shannon Worry's in it. Frank Whaley. And Emmett Walsh. It says, if you could leap back in time and change the past, would you? If you did, could you face the consequences? A young woman comes face to face with these tantalizing questions in this action-packed sci-fi thriller starring James Belushi, Kylie... No, I'm not going to go through the cast again. Exploding with breathtaking special effects and startling twists and turns, this full-throttle adventure pushes the envelope for cutting-edge excitement. Kylie Travis, Karen, is a beautiful hostage negotiator trying to escape from a tragic past, but her desperate flight leads to an even greater horror when she finds herself stranded on a deserted highway and at the mercy of a violent psychopath who commits a brutal murder right in front of her eyes. But this time, Karen gets a second chance. Stumbling upon an isolated research center, she meets a brilliant young scientist, that's Frank Whaley, and the psychopath is played by James Belushi, which is really interesting because I don't feel like he played enough villains, and he's actually really good as a villain. She meets a brilliant young scientist and discovers a top secret device that gives her the opportunity to stop the savage rampage before it begins. This one is just one of those like home video store favorites. I saw this on VHS way back. This came out in 97. I probably saw it in the late 90s. And it was one of those that you would recommend for a while, and then I even forgot about it. And then I had a DVD, and I would recommend the DVD for a little bit, and then it disappeared forever. You know, it wasn't on Blu-ray. This is relatively recent in terms of its release. Not that recent, but it hadn't been on Blu-ray for a long time. And this doesn't have any features, unfortunately. But it's one of my favorite time-bounce movies. It's one of the ones that I think, you know, if you love Groundhog Day and you want to see a darker thriller, serial killer take on that, I recommend Retroactive. I also really love 1201, which is with... I'm going to forget the entire cast right now. But anyway, I love 1201 and Retroactive. They're two of the time-bounce movies from that period. 1201's from like 93. This is from 97. But I was really excited that Kino put this out on Blu-ray. So if you're looking for more time-bounce fun, and I do like this better than Boss Level, and Boss Level was a lot of fun, this is the one. Check out Retroactive. Okay. Killer Apes. We have Link, an experiment in terror with Elizabeth Shue and Terrence Stamp. This directed by one of my favorites, Richard Franklin, who did Road Games and Psycho 2 and FX. Or did he just do FX2? I'm going to talk about that in a second. A little Richard Franklin double bill here. Okay. So, Link. Elizabeth Shue and Terrence Stamp co-star in the suspenseful horror film directed by Richard Franklin. Jerry Goldsmith's score, I should mention that. So, young graduate student Jane Chase, Elizabeth Shue, becomes the new assistant to an eccentric zoology professor, Terrence Stamp. At the remote home he shares with his two brilliant chimpanzees, an elderly orangutan butler named Link. But when one of the chimps is found dead and the professor mysteriously disappears, Link becomes dangerously aggressive towards Jane. Now the time for quote-unquote monkey business is over and the true terror is about to begin. So it is an animal attacks movie in a way. You have Link back there, I believe. Yes, the orangutan. So, yeah, no, this is neat. Terrence Stamp is a little creepy in it. And Elizabeth Shue, I mean, look, he's got that crazy, like, professor hair going there. I want to get to the, well, I guess I'll never have crazy professor hair, but if I could, I would love some white, crazy professor hair like Terrence Stamp has in this movie. Anyway, he's very good in it. He's very weird. And it is kind of a, you know, woman against animals kind of thing. You know, she's trapped in this house. She's trying to escape. The orangutan knows the house really well. And I'm not going to give any more of it away than that. But It is very well done. Richard Franklin was a master of suspense, as was his mentor and hero, Alfred Hitchcock. And he just really knew how to put a movie together. Cloak and Dagger, that's the other one I love from Richard Franklin, which still needs a Blu-ray, darn it. And so this is really well done. It has the animal attack stuff. It has the suspense. It's very enjoyable stuff. It has an audio commentary from film historian Lee Gambin and film critic Jarrett Gahan, deleted work print scenes, an audio interview with Richard Franklin, Jerry Goldsmith demo of the Link theme, and this is a Region A. Most of these are going to be Region A if I haven't mentioned that. But I do like just about everything that Richard Franklin did. So if you're a Richard Franklin fan and you haven't seen Link, check out Link. Okay. I'm going to skip over FX1 and go straight to FX2, which I think is one of the better sequels ever. Like, just in terms of, like, continuing the legacy of the first film and doing something with the ideas in the first film and making it just as fun and in some ways more fun. FX2 is pretty darn solid. And again, Richard Franklin. So that's part of the reason it's so good. The Deadly Art of Illusion also has one of the great sequel subheadings of all time. The Deadly Art of Illusion. You know, if you're sick of using Electric Boogaloo for your, sequel jokes, The Deadly Art of Illusion is definitely right there for you to pick it up and grab it. Brian Brown and Brian Dennehy are back as Raleigh and Leo in an all-new action thriller. The FX saga with stylish wit and unrelenting suspense. Let's see, 5 years after the first deadly adventure, Raleigh Tyler has left the special effects business. In case you don't remember, Brian Brown plays a special effects guy in the first film who gets pulled into a sort of a government investigation, a witness protection program thing that then blows up in his face. And I'm not going to spoil FX. Go watch FX. It's great. Has left the special effects business and now designs sophisticated electronic toys for a living. But when his girlfriend's ex-husband, a police detective, persuades him to devise an illusion to capture a serial killer, Raleigh is once again lured into the lethal world of make-believe. And soon he finds himself trapped in a murderous maze of deceit and treachery in which he must depend on his ingenious tricks and his friends with Detective Leo McCarthy, Brian Dennehy, to expose a terrifying underworld conspiracy, but only if he can stay alive. And there's a great bit I'm only going to give away. I don't think you can see it on the back here, but one of the toys that Brian Brown has come up with is this clown, and I can't remember what the clown's name, but basically it's like you put on a harness, if I remember, and when you move, the clown moves, and it's a life-size clown, so it's really creepy. But like if you swing your arm, he swings his arm, and so there's some great potential for fun to be had with that prop. And the movie does it really well late in the film. And I'm not going to give away any more than that. But that's one of the really fun set piece / devices of the film is this clown thing that he's created. And Brian Brown is I'm just a big fan. Like FX was like kind of a family favorite for my family growing up. And so we watched FX a lot, despite it being incredibly violent, even if fake in some parts. We watched it a lot and really liked it. And we didn't watch FX2 as much. But I've really come to appreciate it in the years since. So definitely worth your time. This just has a making of featurette as the features on it, but still really good, really worthwhile sequel. Just a few more here. Transformations. This is one that definitely I hadn't even heard of until this Blu-ray came out. And it does have certainly one thing going for it is it has Lisa Langlois. There you see Lisa Langlois. She is in Deadly Prey, one of my favorite films, one of my favorite animal attacks movies, the rat movie. And so she's in this, so I'm immediately in. It says an act of passion unleashes a deadly force. In the furthest reaches of the galaxy, a lone transport pilot, Wolfgang Wolf Shattuck, locks in his destination, switches an automatic pilot, and retires for the night. Little does he know that the events will steer him into a collision course with gruesome horrors of transformations, where a horrifying evil lurks behind seductive facades. When Wolf awakens from a nightmarish slumber, he finds himself in the hospital ward of a prison colony. His ship crashed with its cargo intact. Soon he finds himself gripped with a grotesque and mysterious disease that transforms him into a horrendous beast. And only the purity of the beautiful Miranda, Lisa Langlois. Oh, she's also in Class of 1984. Totally forgot about that. Stands between the deadly disease and the rest of mankind. Also starring Patrick McNee as Father Christopher. So I can't remember if I watched this Blu-ray yet. But as you can see from the cover, it's definitely an interesting entry, and it's, horror and sci-fi together. It's from 1988, and it's Empire Pictures. Take that for what you will. But I think this Blu-ray came out early enough in the Kino cycle that nobody remembers this has even been released. So if you're a horror fan, this might be an undiscovered gem for you, I think. It has an audio commentary with the director, Jay Kamen, interview with Lisa Langlois, and a When in Rome interview with Jay Kamen as well. So Transformations, definitely underappreciated, underseen, underknown Blu-ray release. Sharp left turn, we're going to talk about Wanda, Nevada. This is directed by Peter Fonda, who stars in the film with Brooke Shields. And this is one that I don't feel like had much in the way of a home video release. Maybe a VHS tape, and maybe a made-on-demand DVD. I don't know. But this one I feel like I had heard of and would see on MGM HD a lot. This one aired there. And I was like, what is that Peter Fonda, Brooke Shields movie? It says Brooke Shields lights up the screen as Wanda Nevada, a stunningly beautiful girl whose charm and ambitions belie her young years and thrust her into excitement beyond her wildest dreams. Peter Fonda directs and stars in this riveting Western that is part fantasy, part scenic tour, part showcase for the budding beauty of Shields, and an all-time thrilling adventure. When a two-bit gambler, played by Fonda, wins her in a poker game, poor and orphaned Wanda can bet that her luck has changed. Forging an uneasy alliance to find a legendary fortune in gold, she and Fonda lay their odds against thieves, a thunderous avalanche, and a vengeful Apache spirit in a perilous race for the lost treasure. The stellar cast includes Fiona Lewis, Luke Askew, Paul Fix, and Henry Fonda in his only screen appearance with his son. Wow, I forgot about that. Crazy town. So yeah, kind of like, I don't know, like almost like a little bit of Raiders of the Lost Ark, a little bit of like some adventure-y stuff happening with this one. But another movie that was early on in the Kino releases, so has no features, but is a little known Peter Fonda film. I do remember seeing parts of it on MGM HD and really enjoying the chemistry between Fonda and Brooke Shields. Like there's a really great rapport between them. And I just like Peter Fonda a lot. And I like him as a director. I think he did some really interesting work as a director. The Hired Hand is incredible. One of the best Westerns of that period, of the 70s. So anyway, this is not that. This is much lighter, but still interesting. Wanda, Nevada. Okay, probably one of the most known of the films I'm talking about here, Broken Flowers, of course, by Jim Jarmusch. One of the great latter Bill Murray performances. I love that he sort of hooked up with Jim Jarmusch and started appearing in his films as he did with Wes Anderson. And this one is just really solid. I remember loving this when it came out in the theater. Bill Murray delivers one of his best performances in this comedic story of an aging Don Juan who hits the road on a revealing and humorous cross-country journey when a mysterious pink letter informs Don Johnston, Bill Murray, that he may have a 19-year-old son. He visits 4 former lovers where he comes face-to-face with the errors of his past and the possibilities of the future. So yeah, his former lovers are played by Sharon Stone, I think Julie Delpy, Jessica Lange, Tilda Swinton. Jeffrey Wright is really fun in this movie. But yeah, it's a dramedy, but it's introspective, and it's just one of those roles where you get to see Bill Murray stretch out a little bit and have some melancholy and have some, I don't know, I would imagine there's some personal stuff in this in terms of his performance that he's bringing in his own life in whatever way that you might, I don't know, may or may not realize that he maybe he has some of these feelings. Some of this guy is in him. I don't know. It just felt really authentic in a certain way. Like, and unlike too many Bill Murray performances I had seen in 2005, you know, he had been doing some dramatic performances, but this one really captured my attention. So this doesn't have much for features. Girl on the Bus extended scene, farmhouse featurette, some outtakes. No Jarmusch interview, which is too bad. I'd love to hear him talk about that one. Just two more here. Youngblood. I really like this one. This is one of my favorite sports movies. This is a hockey movie with Rob Lowe and Patrick Swayze. Rob Lowe plays, let's see here. Youngblood is fist-flying, stick-smashing, body-checking thrills right up to the final buzzer. Teenager Dean Youngblood, Rob Lowe, has outskated just about everybody since he was 6. Now he's set his sights toward National Hockey League fame with a ragtag Hamilton Mustangs, an amateur Canadian team just across the border from his family's farm. Certain that his swift moves on the ice will dazzle the crowds, Dean quickly learns his speed and finesse won't pack enough punch against the bad boys of the league, the Thunder Bay Bombers. And when the Mustangs' top scorer, played by Patrick Swayze in a great performance, gets knocked out, Dean has to turn from a rookie to an all-star fast. Let's see here. This also stars Cynthia Gibb, who I adore. She's amazing in Modern Girls, one of my favorites. Another Kino Blu-ray that I highly recommend you pick up. There's Cynthia Gibb on the back there with Rob Lowe. And another great Ed Lauter performance. He plays the coach of the hockey team, and he is fantastic. He is, of course, Cynthia Gibb's father. And so when Rob Lowe and Cynthia Gibb start to become friendly, that doesn't bode well with Coach Ed Lauter. And yeah, I love him in this movie. I really think he's great. Just some really great one-liners and just perfectly suited to this role. But Swayze is great as the sort of like, oh, I'm going to teach this young rookie what's what / become his buddy later in the movie. And there's some really great evil villains in that Thunder Bay Bombers team. And there's some great tension in terms of the fights and the potential harm that can come to some of these players. These guys don't wear helmets all the time. In fact, I don't think they wear helmets at all. And so there's a lot of potential for folks to get really hurt. And so that's a nice, interesting tension throughout the film. But a really great sports movie. This has a commentary by director Peter Markle. I like that one a lot. And then last, Firebirds. This one, I haven't seen this in forever. I saw this in the theater. This is from 1990. Here's one of the most exciting nonstop action. Sorry, I don't know about that. Action adventure hits since Top Gun. When an international enemy turns to high-tech weaponry, the U.S. Army enlists the aid of the Apaches, America's elite airborne task force, specially trained for aerial assault. Flying the world's most advanced attack helicopters, these hotshot Firebirds battle an evasive foe, hovering, diving, and dodging death on dangerous secret missions inside hostile territory. Nicolas Cage, Tommy Lee Jones, and Sean Young star in this explosive action epic full of aerial gunfights and combat acrobatics. Audiences will be blown away. Audio commentary by director David Green. Not David Gordon Green, just so you are aware. But yeah, I remember this one being fun. Very much a Top Gun type knockoff. And I'm just a huge Nicolas Cage fan. I'm actually a huge Tommy Lee fan. And they have a great, Tom Skerritt and Tom Cruise kind of chemistry in this movie. And so, kind of a Top Gun with Apache helicopters, if you will. But a movie that I feel like, Nicolas Cage fans need to revisit because he's very enjoyable in this film, and it's definitely worth your time. I think there's another Blu-ray of this, maybe from like Mill Creek, but I like this one better. It has the commentary, and it's just a better disc, I think, all around. So Firebirds to close out my Kino stack. That was a lot of movies. Hopefully there's some in here that you enjoy or haven't even realized Kino had put out. Look for these in future sales because they are older titles. I think a lot of these could end up being cheap buys during various Kino sales that you might notice in the future. So that's part of the reason to do this video, is to kind of give you fodder for those Kino sales, which seem to be cropping up more and more these days. Look for some of these older titles as potentials to pick up if you're interested in such things. Thank you for watching. Let me know if any of these are interesting to you at all in the comments below. Give this a thumbs up if this is something you enjoyed. And thank you so much for sticking with me through 45 minutes if you were able to tough it out. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.